Part 33. I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 321. Chen Hao always felt that this guy was a little bit hypocritical. But, thinking back, it was true. For himself, it might be just a piece of cake, but for him, his piece of cake changed his fate. Chen Hao retracted his sight, looked at the ocean in front of him, and stopped talking, quietly admiring the scenery. Time passed bit by bit. Hai Huangqing picked up the flute, and the sound rang out. The leisurely flute sound echoed on the island. Wow! Suddenly there was a sound, and a fishman emerged from the sea in front. Seeing this fishman, Hai Huangqing stopped playing and looked at the fishman in front of him. The fishman stood on the sea with his tail. He raised his body, put his hands on his chest, and said to Hai Huangqing, "Third Prince, His Majesty Hai Huang summoned you." Chen Hao noticed that Hai Huangqing had a hint of helplessness in his eyes after hearing this. He looked at Chen Hao, "It's probably about the war." Then, "Brother Hao, I should go. I hope we can see each other again next time." Hearing this, Chen Hao showed a gentle smile, "If we are destined, we will see each other again next time." Hai Huangqing nodded slightly, and he jumped from the reef and landed on the sea. He was supported by the waves on the sea. He turned slightly and looked at Chen Hao, who was sitting on the reef with a smile on his face. He raised his hands, put them on his chest, bowed slightly to Chen Hao, saluted, and then turned around. The waves carried him and the fishman into the sea together. Chen Hao watched Hai Huangqing's figure disappear on the sea. He adjusted his mood, took a deep breath, raised his face, and looked at the blue ocean in front of him. 5 years ago, this guy had a sad face and was worried. Today, he still had worries. Yes, the greater the ability, the greater the responsibility. With great responsibility, you will naturally be busy, Chen Hao muttered. Chen Hao looked at the blue crystal beside him. Database, Hai Huangqing just said that 5 years have passed. What's going on? I remember that I only stayed in the God realm for 1 year. The flow rate of time in the ocean star is 5 times faster than that in the outside world. A mechanical voice sounded in Chen Hao's mind. Hearing this, Chen Hao couldn't help but be stunned. What's going on? With the current data in the database, the reason cannot be analyzed. The mechanical voice of the database sounded in Chen Hao's mind again. Simply put, this guy doesn't know. Chen Hao frowned, and he subconsciously raised his face and looked up. What he saw was the blue sky. Looking up from the inside of this ocean star, he couldn't see the environmental transformation ring. Regarding the different flow rate of time on the ocean star from the outside world, could it be related to the environmental transformation ring? I don't know. Chen Hao slowly stood up. Let's go to the Big Bear and have a look. I haven't been there for a year, and I don't know how the Big Bear is doing. Chen Hao's figure disappeared on the reef. On a towering mountain range in the Goblin Star, there is a mountain top, and this mountain top is like being cut flat by an extremely huge blade. On this mountain top, there is a 7-pointed star teleportation array. Suddenly, a figure appeared in this 7-pointed star teleportation array. It was Chen Hao. Chen Hao came back to his senses and looked forward subconsciously. Now he is on the top of the mountain, and this mountain top is the highest among all the mountains. There are mountains around, and you can basically see everything. It looks no different from before. Who are you? Suddenly, a voice sounded. Hearing this voice, Chen Hao subconsciously looked at the source of the voice. I saw a humanoid creature standing in front of Chen Hao. This creature is in human form, but the lower half of its body is made of rock, and the upper half of its body is covered with rock-like scales. A face similar to a human, but the hair is made of rock, and a face covered with rock-like scales. It is called a rock man, but it also has flesh and blood all over its body. It is like a rock man with flesh and blood. At this moment, it is staring at Chen Hao with a pair of golden pupils, with a hint of doubt in its eyes. It does not know Chen Hao, but Chen Hao can easily guess the identity of this thing. This is obviously a new creature created by the big bear. Chen Hao smiled, before asking others about their identities. I think it would be more polite to introduce myself first. My god asked me to protect the teleportation array to prevent others from approaching and destroying it. The rock man looked at Chen Hao. The teleportation array is under your feet. If possible, I hope you can leave here. As he said, the rock man slowly sat down, sitting on a huge stone chair beside him, looking at Chen Hao. Chen Hao was slightly startled. This personality is somewhat similar to the big bear. Very stable. Chen Hao said, "What's your name?" The rock man looked at Chen Hao. "Name? What is that?" "Oh, I understand. This teleportation array was created by Xiaoying. For Daxian, this teleportation array is equivalent to what he left behind. Therefore, Daxian attaches great importance to this teleportation array, so at the beginning it deliberately reserved the highest position for the creation of the teleportation array. Now Daxian created the rock man in front of him for the purpose of protecting this teleportation array. Daxian obviously did not intend to name this rock man, but just gave him an order. Chen Hao crossed his arms and looked at the rock man. A name is a code name, a name. Just like you and your companions, if you are together, others want to find you. If you have a name, others can directly call your name. The rock man frowned and thought for a moment before shaking his head. I don't have a name. Chen Hao touched his chin, looked at the rock man, and said, then let me get you one, and you'll call it. I see it's covered in rocks, and the body is golden, so I'll call you Ajin. Whatever you want. Ajin's face was expressionless, as if it didn't matter. It looked at Chen Hao. Can you leave from the teleportation array? Hearing this, Chen Hao looked at the teleportation array at his feet. He took a few steps to the side and left from the teleportation array. Seeing this, Ajin's slightly wrinkled eyebrows slowly relaxed. Chen Hao looked at Ajin's expression and said, how long have you been at the top of this mountain? Ajin said slowly, 1 year. 1 year? Chen Hao's heart moved. In other words, Daxian created it and left it here after he left? Have you ever left this mountain top? Chen Hao asked. Ajin said, no. Not even a step. Not even a step. This. Chen Hao touched his nose. This thing should be a monster. Monsters don't need to eat and can indeed stay there forever. Chen Hao looked at Big Bear. Don't you feel bored and lonely? What is boredom and what is loneliness? Ajin looked at Chen Hao in confusion. Chen Hao crossed his arms over his chest and thought for a moment. How should I put it? Chen Hao looked at Ajin. That is to say, you will feel irritable after staying for a long time. Sometimes you will suddenly think of someone to talk to you. If someone talks to you, you will be in a better mood. Hearing this, Ajin looked at Chen Hao and was silent for a moment. It seemed to be thinking. Ajin nodded slightly. Staying here alone will indeed make you a little irritable. When the giant winged god talks to you and me, the irritability will indeed disappear. Is that really the case? Even the Ajin monster has feelings and feels lonely. Staying here for a year with this emotion. Suddenly, Ajin seemed to feel something. He subconsciously turned his face and looked in one direction. It stood up slowly, its eyes a little more respectful. My god is here. I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 322. The god of this rock man is naturally the big bear. Chen Hao looked sideways and saw the humanoid bear flapping a pair of extremely huge rock wings behind him, flying towards the side. Big Bear is the main god of earth attributes. It does not have the ability to move instantly like Xiaoying and Xiadi. If it wants to come over quickly, it can only rely on movement. The big bear flew to the top of the mountain and landed. Seeing the big bear, Ajin put his hands on his chest and saluted to the big bear, "My god." The big bear ignored Ajin. It looked at Chen Hao, raised his hand and put it on his chest, "Master." When Big Bear said this, Ajin was stunned for a moment and looked at Chen Hao in astonishment. Chen Hao said with a smile, "I haven't seen you for a year, how are you doing?" Big Bear said, "I have eliminated all the goblins." With that said, Dakshin took out a card and handed it to Chen Hao. Chen Hao was startled and took it. The name on the card is Mountain God Collection Card Book. This is a card collection book, used to store cards. Chen Hao looked at Dakshin, "What is this?" Dakshin explained, "The owner has the habit of collecting pets. I was worried that after the goblins became extinct, the owner would not be able to collect them if he wanted to. So I helped the owner collect some goblins first. In this collection card book, there are goblin cards of various levels are available for the owner to play with." "Oh." Chen Hao smiled and nodded slightly, "It's very careful, so I'll put it away. I guess it won't be used, but it would be good to keep some as specimens for study." Although the big bear looks big, he is still very careful. Chen Hao turned his head and looked at Ajin next to him, "Is this the creature you created?" When Ajin saw Chen Hao, he hurriedly saluted Chen Hao. Big Bear nodded slightly, "I created it. I asked it to help guard this teleportation array to prevent it from being destroyed by some creatures." Yes, Chen Hao looked at the big bear, "If possible, give it some time to move around freely. Don't stay here all the time. Life requires some freedom." The big bear was startled, then nodded slightly, "Okay." Chen Hao glanced at Ajin, then withdrew his gaze and looked at Big Bear, "Besides Ajin, have you created other creatures?" Big Bear nodded slightly, "Yes, I created them and used them to deal with the goblins." "Are they all the same as Ajin?" Chen Hao said. "Ajin," there was a hint of doubt in De Xiong's eyes. "My god, this is the name given to me by the Lord God." Ajin explained aloud. The big bear was startled, then nodded slightly, then looked at Chen Hao, "Yes, almost the same as Ajin." Chen Hao smiled and crossed his arms, "I feel that the life you created is a bit like your tool, which is not good." There was a trace of confusion in Big Bear's eyes, "Master, but those are creatures created by my divine power. I need them to exist, so they exist. In this way, aren't they tools?" Chen Hao's smile froze. "Really?" From the moment Chen Hao met Ajin, Chen Hao realized a problem. Big Bear seems to use the life he created as a tool without emotion or consciousness. This is simply like a replica of Satya. However, that's not quite right. Logically speaking, Big Bear's character shouldn't be like this. You know, the big bear can be said to be the gentler existence among the beasts that Chen Hao currently owns. Although he looks silly and fierce on the outside, he is very patient and loving towards the three wolves. If even the big bear has this kind of character, then wouldn't it be true that other master god level beasts who create creatures will use the creatures they create as tools? Suddenly, an idea flashed in Chen Hao's mind. He remembered, "Yes. I heard Satya say before that the 7 main gods of VAF continent created life because they had nothing to do and were bored. It was not until later that they slowly realized that the lives they created were not simply tools for their enjoyment, and slowly they began to treat these lives like children. Judging from what Satya said, it proves one thing. When the 7 major gods created life, they were just like the big bears now. They also used those lives as tools for fun. It's just a tool. The 7 major gods are like this, so it's no wonder that Big Bear is like this too." Chen Hao looked at the big bear and said patiently, "Whether they are created by you or born by nature, as long as they are intelligent beings, they have infinite possibilities. They are emotional beings just like you and me. In their eyes, you are their god, you can give them orders, but you cannot treat them completely as a tool. Tools and life are different." Chen Hao looked at Big Bear seriously. There was confusion in the big bear's eyes, but he still nodded. What the master said is very profound and I can't understand it, but I will do what the master said. Hearing this, Chen Hao smiled. Go and do your work. Don't pay too much attention to me. I just came here to see you and the changes in this world. Yes, Big Bear responded. Chen Hao withdrew his gaze and looked at Ajin, only to see Ajin looking here with admiration in his eyes. Chen Hao smiled slightly. See you next time. With that said, Chen Hao disappeared from the spot. Ajin looked at the place where Chen Hao disappeared, with a glint in his eyes. My God's master, I never thought that there is such a existence in this world. At the same time, Chen Hao's figure appeared in mid-air in another canyon. Suspended in mid-air, Chen Hao looked down. From below, Chen Hao could see that there were many caves in the canyon, and rock men lived in the caves. These rock people, like Ajin, look like humans with rock scales. These rock people gathered in this place and carved caves in the mountains as their homes. Chen Hao noticed that at the entrance of a cave, a female rock man was walking around with a baby in her arms. Seeing this scene, Chen Hao's pupils condensed slightly. Child. Reproduce. Big Bear, these creatures were created by merging rock humans with human genes. So do these rock humans also have the ability to reproduce? It looks a little strange. Master, suddenly, a voice came from beside him. Chen Hao came back to his senses and looked to his side. She saw Zayadi flying in mid-air, and she looked at herself. The god of Dharma is here. Hearing this, Chen Hao smiled. It's been a year. Is the old man still alive? Okay, let's go back. I'm also planning to go see him and visit an old friend. Planet VAF is in chaos. There is an empire war, a war between demons and humans. In the past year, you sang and I came on stage. Even the Dharma god would probably feel uncomfortable. I just happened to come to visit and see what news the old man brought this time. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 323. In the territory of the orcs to the west of the Warcraft Mountains in VAF continent. There are many branches of the orcs, among which the Lion Men are recognized as the most powerful race by all the orcs. Currently located in the Lion tribe. A girl from the Silver Fox tribe knelt on the ground, her hands together and her fingers interlaced in a praying posture. Master, you left Jiaoer in the Silver Fox clan and asked Jiaoer to protect the clan. What Jiaoer is doing now is what Jiaoer did after careful consideration, in order to protect the Silver Fox clan. However, Jiaoer is very confused and doesn't know if what he is doing is right or not. Jiaoer is very confused. If the master can hear Jiaoer's prayer, please tell the master and let Jiaoer know. When Jiaoer was talking, blood surged around her, and the blood stained Jiaoer's knees red. If you widen your field of view, you can see the remains of lions lying one after another around Jiaoer. The Lion Man tribe is the most powerful race in the orc branch, and it is also the race with the largest number. The entire tribe covers a radius of hundreds of miles. But now, all the lions within 100 miles have turned into corpses. There were countless Lion Man corpses chopped into pieces with sharp blades lying on the streets. The corpses piled up like mountains, and the blood from the corpses dyed the entire Lion tribe red. At the same time, in the God realm, Chen Hao welcomed a guest into his residence. This guest is none other than the god of Dharma. The Dharma god is sitting in the palace hall. Chen Hao came out of the inner hall and saw the skinny old man in white robes in front of him. Chen Hao smiled. The god of law also noticed Chen Hao coming out. He quickly stood up, put his hand on his chest, and saluted Chen Hao. Please pays homage to the god of creation. Chen Hao was startled, then he smiled. Sit down, you don't have to be so polite. Anyway, this old guy didn't believe him when he said he was not a god of creation, and Chen Hao didn't bother to dwell on this issue. The Dharma god sat down. Chen Hao sat on the chair. A six-winged forest angel came over carrying water. It walked to the god of law, picked up the water glass on the plate, and placed it on the table next to the god of law. The Dharma god looked at the actions of the six-winged forest angel. The muscles on his old face twitched and his complexion turned pale. He swallowed. Chen Hao watched the Dharma god's reaction and touched his chin. The six-winged forest angels are actually the evolved bodies of the previous wood elves. Although they have evolved into seraphim, to them, they are still Chen Hao's servants. So serving tea and pouring water is a daily thing for them. But for the Dharma god, I guess not. Seraphim are existences second only to the Lord God. They are at the level of the God King. The God of Law and Sword God calls the seraphim demigods. This is an existence that can destroy heaven and earth. But such a being, serving tea and water like a servant, must have frightened the knowledgeable Dharma god. Especially, when the seraphim waiting to serve Chen Hao were still standing on both sides of the hall. Chen Hao said, "Zayadi." Zayadi looked at Chen Hao. Chen Hao said with a smile, "Let's take the seraphs out first. I want to chat with the Dharma god alone and I don't need anyone else to serve me." Zayadi nodded slightly and looked at the angels. "Everyone, did you hear what the master said? Let's go." The angels followed Fluttershy and left through the gate. Chen Hao looked at the backs of the little guys. He crossed his arms and said, "I don't know where these little guys learn these things. They stand in 2 rows whenever there are guests." With that said, Chen Hao looked away and looked at the god of law with an elegant and gentle smile. "Old sir, I'm sorry, they seem to have scared you." The Dharma god was startled. He coughed and showed an awkward smile. "Seraphs are servants, and the main god is the beast. Only you, as the creator god, can have such specifications." "Well." Chen Hao raised his eyebrows and smiled, "Mister, I'm here, just say whatever you want. You don't have to praise me all the time. Although I'm very happy, I don't understand your behavior." "Agreed." The god of law's smile froze, he coughed and then looked at Chen Hao. "Actually, I don't have any other intentions when I come back. I just want to come and see Master Chuangshen after a year." Chen Hao smiled, "That's good. In fact, if you didn't come to me, I would have wanted to go to you. Last year, there was a war between humans first, and then a war between demons and humans. The VAF continent was in chaos. I'm a little worried about whether you can survive well, old man." Haha, the god of law laughed a few times. "It's a mess, but my old bones can still stand it. Thanks to Master Chuangshen, I'm still strong. However, human beings are really in chaos now. Human civil war, the invasion of demons, the people in the north of the continent are now living in a fiery life. The demons are burning, looting, and many cities in the north have been turned into a sea of flames." Fa. God said helplessly. Hearing this, Chen Hao looked at the helpless Dharma god. Then, why doesn't the old gentleman take action? The god of Dharma was stunned for a moment, and he smiled bitterly. "Lord God of creation, you are putting me in danger, old man. Although people call me the god of Dharma, in fact I am just a human being. Let me deal with hundreds or thousands. I'm confident that I can handle it, but the demon army is basically in the tens of thousands. And, the demon king is now staring at me and the sword god. We can fight the demon king together, but if we fight alone, the demon king will catch us and kill us. As the last trump card of mankind, if we lose it, then all mankind will be completely hopeless. Now we can only wait for the opportunity. While waiting for the opportunity, there will still be humans who will not have time to escape and suffer." The god of law sighed, showing helplessness. Hearing this, Chen Hao remembered. Yes, although others call him the god of law, his strength is actually comparable to that of a beast master in the Holy Beast period. The power possessed by the god of law comes from the magic element in the outside world, and the magic element needs his mental power to communicate. His mental power is not endless, it will be exhausted. This means that he can't deal with too many demons alone. Add the Demon King. Yes, the god of law is not a god. He is different from Shisha and Bader, and the difference is not small. I almost forgot. Chen Hao smiled and said, I believe that you can solve this problem by cooperating with the sword god. The god of law was startled. He looked at Chen Hao and nodded slightly, old man, the sword god and I have this confidence, but it takes time. During this period of war, those innocent people will also die and suffer. Ah, the god of law sighed. The god of law's face was full of sorrow and troubles. It was completely different from the god of law who was smiling last year. The god of law was full of joy in peacetime, but now that there is unrest, the god of law has begun to worry. In fact, the current contradiction between the demons and humans is not difficult to explain. The contradiction of survival, the demon continent where the demons are located is not a place where they can survive, and the WAF continent is naturally a place suitable for survival. In fact, it is very simple for Chen Hao to stop the invasion of the demons. He only needs to let Shisha give an order, and those demons will retreat obediently. But this is undoubtedly unfair to the demons. I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 324. What do you plan to do next, old gentleman? Just wait for the opportunity, Chen Hao looked at the god of laws. The god of law frowned. After more than 30,000 years of cultivation, the demons now have no support from gods, but humans have also lost the protection of gods. To defeat the demons, we can only rely on humans themselves, but there are too many demons, and the demons are naturally powerful. It is actually very difficult for humans alone to defeat the current demons. Moreover, humans are no longer as united as they were more than 30,000 years ago. Today's humans are divided into countless empires, and countless empires have been derived at the same time. Hatred, it's so difficult to unite them. If you want to defeat the demons, I think you have to rely on the power of foreign races. Just like 30,000 years ago, unite the power of other races. Chen Hao looked at the god of law, other races. The Dharma god nodded slightly. 30,000 years ago, there were many races that cooperated with humans to defeat the demons. But, speaking of this, the Dharma god looked a little depressed. However, things are different now than they were 30,000 years ago. The elves have been squeezed out by humans, causing most of the elves to choose to live in seclusion in the spiritual forest, and the winged tribe even lived in seclusion in the storm early. Gu has lost contact with the outside world. These two races have not communicated with humans for a long time. It is not easy to persuade them to join the resistance against the demons. The god of law thought for a moment. If humans want to resist the demons, the best support currently is from the orcs. The orcs, are those orcs on the other side of the Warcraft mountains? Chen Hao looked at the goddess. The god of magic nodded slightly. The orcs are the race that hates the demons the most. They are the neighbors of humans. Moreover, the number of the orcs has exceeded the number of other races except humans. With the help of the orcs, humans and the demons are the same. The power of war. The lion men are the strongest among the beast tribe. The lion men in the lion men are naturally powerful in combat. With their help, I believe they can resist the demons. Hearing this, Chen Hao smiled. It seems that the old gentleman already has a solution. The god of Dharma smiled bitterly. If I, as the god of Dharma, don't have any idea about this kind of thing, humanity will be really hopeless. Haha, Chen Hao smiled. At this time, Chen Hao noticed Xiadi walking in from the door. After she came in, she walked to Chen Hao and said, Master, something happened over there at Jiao'er. Chen Hao was startled and looked at Xiadi. Jiao'er. Something happened to her. What Xiadi said made Chen Hao a little confused. Chen Hao clearly remembered that Jiao was armored as a pulse beast. Her strength had exceeded the main god stage, and he left her with the beast tribe. In that place, she probably had no opponents. She could what's up? Xiadi subconsciously looked at the Dharma god beside her. The Dharma god stood up and said with a smile, I think it's almost time. Old sir, please sit down. Seeing the Dharma god's appearance, Chen Hao couldn't help but shout out to signal the Dharma god not to avoid suspicion. Chen Hao looked at Xiadi, the old gentleman is my friend. You don't need to hide my affairs, just tell me directly. What happened to Jiao? Xiadi nodded slightly, Jiao wiped out the lion tribe. Chen Hao was startled, huh? Lion clan? You mean, lion clan? Dharma god couldn't help but speak out. Chen Hao looked at the god of law, only to find that the god of law was looking shocked. Chen Hao thought of the Dharma god's analysis just now and touched the back of his head. The god of law had just told himself that he planned to unite with the orcs, especially the powerful helper of the lion tribe. As a result, something happened not long after he finished speaking. Chen Hao looked at Xiadi, I asked Jiao to protect the silver fox tribe before, so why did I go and destroy the lion tribe? Xiadi shook her head. She doesn't know either. Chen Hao touched his chin, thought for a moment, and then looked at the god of law. He smiled and said, Mister, why don't you come with me to the orcs to have a look? The Dharma god was startled, then nodded slightly, I was planning to go take a look. Chen Hao stood up. When the Dharma god saw Chen Hao's actions, he also stood up. As soon as Dharma god stood up, he suddenly felt his eyes darken and then light up. The Dharma god came back to his senses, but found that the surrounding environment had changed. He looked around, and his eyes widened. This is an orc tribe, and at this moment, the ground of this orc tribe is filled with countless corpses and remains, and blood is flowing. The Dharma god could smell a strong smell of blood for a moment. Smelling the smell of blood, Dharma god was suddenly confused, this is. He looked at the appearance of the corpses on the ground, and then looked at the familiar primitive wooden hut buildings around him, is this, the lion tribe? The Dharma god raised his face and looked at the sky. He could see the outline of the god realm in the sky. The god of law opened his mouth slightly, his face full of shock. In an instant, just an instant, he came here from the god realm. The god of Dharma subconsciously looked at Chen Hao, is this the power of the god of creation? Teleport directly to this plane from another plane, and can be fixed in the lion tribe. After Dharma god looked at Chen Hao, he found that Chen Hao was looking ahead. The god of law looked in the direction Chen Hao was looking. In front of me, I saw a girl with silver fox ears, a silver tail, and snow-white skin. She was kneeling on the ground with her eyes closed, her hands together, her fingers clasped tightly, her eyes closed, her head lowered, revealing a form of prayer. She was kneeling in a pool of blood, her knees and calves were stained red with blood, but she seemed to have no feeling, just kneeling there. Dharma god seemed to realize something and looked at Chen Hao subconsciously. Chen Hao looked at her and said, Jiao. Jiao's ears perked up, she opened her eyes, and turned her face to look at Chen Hao. Their eyes met. Jiao's eyes lit up slightly, and there was a hint of surprise on her face. She quickly stood up and walked quickly to Chen Hao. She looked panicked, but there was a smile on her face, and there was surprise in her eyes, Master. Chen Hao looked at the girl with a happy face and showed an elegant and easygoing smile, what were you doing just now? Jiao was startled. She looked at Chen Hao and said with a smile, I am praying to you, Master. I want to talk to you in the way of prayer. So that's it? Chen Hao smiled, I can't hear this kind of prayer. Maybe you can tell me what you want to say now. Hearing this, Jiao's eyes glowed, Master. Wait a minute. Chen Hao raised his hand to signal Jiao to stop talking. Chen Hao's eyes fell on Jiao's dirty lower body. Her legs were covered in dirty blood because she was kneeling in a pool of blood. She didn't look so good. Chen Hao raised his hand, and golden light lit up. The dirt on Jiao's lower body disappeared. Seeing this, Jiao's eyes glowed with luster. When the Dharma god on the side saw this scene, he subconsciously looked at Chen Hao and thought to himself, the god of creation is too gentle. Dharma god recalled the time when he met Chen Hao. This seems to be the case. The man in front of him is very gentle, whether he treats beasts, his subordinates, or other people. That kind of gentleness is a gentleness from above. He is like a being from above, looking down at all life with his gentle eyes. Give all life the same tenderness. Is this the character of the Creator God? He is truly worthy of being a god of creation. Dharma God sighed in his heart. Chen Hao looked at Jiao and said with a smile, okay, it's not good to be dirty. Now you can say it. Jiao hummed, thank you, Master. I want to tell you that you asked me to protect the Silver Fox clan, but, I don't know if what I am doing is right. As she spoke, she looked at the broken corpses of the lion men around her. Chen Hao looked at the corpses. He looked at Jiao and said, why did you do this? Chen Hao wanted to know this question, because Chen Hao's order to Jiao was to ask Jiao to protect the Silver Fox clan, but suddenly, Jiao directly wiped out the Lion clan. This somewhat confused Chen Hao. I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 325. Jiao looked at Chen Hao and said, a year ago, the master left me here to protect the safety of the Silver Fox tribe. It was normal at first, but then, the lionmen came. They came to the tribe and wanted to forcibly abduct my sisters, so I killed them. After that, the lionmen began to send people to cause trouble for my tribe. I had no choice but to continue killing them. The more I killed, the more people they sent, and even brought people from the werewolf and oxmen to deal with us. As soon as those guys stepped into the tribe, I killed them. When they found that they couldn't deal with me, they started to attack the tribe members. The tribe members are in the tribe, and I can protect them. However, the tribe members need to gather and hunt, so they need to go outside. During this period, I found that the lionmen they started to hunt my people. They would take their lives or kidnap and ravage them when they were out gathering and hunting, or when I was away. Jiao said this, she raised her face and looked at Chen Hao, then, I thought of this method, which is also the only way I can think of at present. As long as the lion people are exterminated, all the lion people are dead, I think they can't go to the Silver Fox tribe again. In this way, I can also protect the Silver Fox tribe. It's just. Jiao looked at the corpses of the lion people around, looking at these corpses, there are too many lion people killed. I don't know if I am right or wrong to do this. She looked at Chen Hao, Master, can you tell Jiao? Is it right or wrong for me to do this? Jiao looked at Chen Hao with her blue eyes, which were shining. She looked a little at a loss. After listening to Jiao's words, Chen Hao also knew why Jiao wanted to exterminate the lion people. What the lion people did was too much. It was too much to know whether to live or die. Knowing that Jiao's strength was far superior to theirs, they still dared to act recklessly. Taking advantage of Jiao's absence, they hunted, bullied and ravaged the Silver Fox people. Chen Hao could imagine how Jiao felt when she got the news, rushed to the scene, and saw the bodies of those dead people of the same tribe. That feeling would probably not be very good. Moreover, Jiao's ideas and methods were a bit too radical, but it was normal. Jiao was just an ordinary Silver Fox girl, and she didn't have Chen Hao's IQ. So in the face of this situation, all she could think of was this method. As long as all the enemies died, the Silver Fox tribe would naturally be safe. Although it was too radical, it had to be said that this was indeed a way of protection. Chen Hao looked at Jiao's eyes and smiled, it's a bit too radical. Jiao was stunned, so, am I wrong? Chen Hao smiled casually, not really, the lion tribe started first, they deserve it. However, the means were a bit too radical. In the future, if you encounter such a situation, you can directly talk to their tribal leaders and ask them to respect the Silver Fox tribe and hand over the perpetrators. If the negotiation fails, show your strength again. You can kill hundreds or thousands of lion people to show your strength. If their leaders are still not convinced, kill their leaders and let them change one. If the next one is still not convinced, you kill another one and let them change again until they are convinced. The hand of the god of law stroking his beard paused, and he looked at Chen Hao. In the eyes of the god of law, Chen Hao was smiling, his smile was elegant and easygoing, and his eyes were slightly narrowed because of the smile, looking particularly friendly. But the god of law never expected that this seemingly harmless person could actually say such a bloody thing with a smile. It was as if life was just an ant in his eyes. The god of law slowly retracted his gaze. However, the god of law had to admit that the plan proposed by Chen Hao was reasonable. In the beast tribe, power is absolute. Compared with Jiao's direct extermination of the entire beast tribe, Chen Hao's plan was much milder. Jiao's eyes were shining, and she nodded slightly, I remember. Chen Hao looked at Jiao and felt a little lonely. Chen Hao remembered that the last time he saw Jiao, she was sunny and cheerful, with a smile on her face. Only 1 year had passed, and Jiao's eyes were full of worries, and there was no smile on her face. Although Jiao had been armored and gained power, she had not changed herself. She was still an ordinary silver fox girl. An ordinary fox girl had to bear the pressure and responsibility of protecting a tribe. Strong power could not reduce these pressures, and these pressures made this one simple and ordinary fox girl silent and full of worries in this year. Now she was afraid that she had done something wrong, and she looked very terrified. Chen Hao stretched out his big hand and patted Jiao's hair. Jiao felt something, she raised her face and looked at Chen Hao. Chen Hao smiled gently and said, you have tried very hard. Jiao's eyes sparkled, her little mouth trembled slightly, and tears overflowed from her eyes in an instant, Master. Her voice trembled. In a year, she has been under too much pressure. Before she got the power given by Chen Hao, she was just an ordinary silver fox girl. Her daily duty was to pick some wild fruits and vegetables, and then she could return to the tribe happily. After getting the power given by Chen Hao, she was responsible for protecting the Silver Fox tribe. She needed to stand on the front line and personally face those who bullied the Silver Fox people and those enemies who coveted the Silver Fox girls. In addition to killing, she also had to think about how to protect her people. When she saw her tribe members die, she had to bear the pressure of not protecting them. It was too painful. But no matter how painful it was, she had to deal with it alone and think alone. She didn't know whether the choices and judgments she made in the past year were right or wrong. She was very scared, afraid that she had made mistakes, but no one could tell her which ones were right and which ones were wrong. Because the people around her needed her protection. And Chen Hao's gentle words. The words "you have worked hard" told her that her efforts and the pressure she had endured in the past year were all valuable. Because her master affirmed her. She had a smile on her face. Suddenly, she closed her eyes and fell down softly. Chen Hao moved his body and reached out to support her. Xiadi, who was standing next to her, saw her and walked over. Master, let me see. Chen Hao nodded slightly. Xiadi took Jiao, and a golden halo spread from Xiadi's hand, covering Jiao's body. Xiadi's eyes sparkled, and then she looked at Chen Hao. She is mentally exhausted, and she probably hasn't rested for a long time. Chen Hao nodded slightly. You treat her, and then take her back to the Silver Fox clan, let her have a good rest. Xiadi said, Yes. She picked up Qiao, and her figure turned into a golden light and flew away. Chen Hao crossed his arms and looked at the flying golden light. This little guy has worked too hard. She has indeed worked too hard, but once the Lion clan is exterminated, humans will also have to work hard. The old voice of the God of Law came from the side. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 326. Chen Hao looked back at the Dharma god beside him. The Dharma god had a sad face and a helpless attitude. Seeing this, Chen Hao looked at the tribe in front of him that was full of Lion Man corpses. The Lion Man tribe is gone. I think you can also find other orc tribes to cooperate. There are thousands of branches in the orc tribe. One less person, I think it won't have much impact on the orcs, right? This. The god of magic smiled bitterly. Master Chuangshen doesn't know something. The beast tribe worships the strong, and they are kings based on their strength. The most powerful tribe will be respected by other beast tribes, and can also have command. The right to command other orcs. The lion tribe is the royal clan of the beast tribe. If humans want to unite the entire beast tribe, they only need to tell the lion tribe. As long as the lion king of the lion tribe nods, then they can unite all the beast tribes. But now the lion tribe has been exterminated, and the beast tribe has lost its royal family. Even if humans want to unite with the beast tribe, it will be difficult to unite. Hearing this, Chen Hao crossed his arms across his chest, raised one hand and placed it on his chin, staring at the corpses of the lion tribe and pondering for a moment. Chen Hao does not want to get involved in the war between demons and humans. But because of Qiao's actions, he accidentally joined in. According to the God of Law, if humans cannot unite with the beast tribe, humans will be in danger. Qiao's actions will indirectly lead to mankind's defeat in the war between humans and demons. However, Chen Hao didn't think Qiao had done anything wrong. From Qiao's perspective, everything she did was completely in compliance with the requirements left by Chen Hao. Chen Hao also believes that Qiao did nothing wrong. But intervention is indeed intervention. Chen Hao retracted his hand, folded it across his chest, and said aloud. As Chen Hao's words fell, the Dharma god was slightly startled. He turned his face and looked, only to find that the broken lion corpses were glowing with golden light. Then the severed limbs, blood, and remains all turned into a golden light, condensing in front of Chen Hao. One card after another appeared in front of Chen Hao. The god of Dharma looked intently. Civilian lion. Taming degree, 100%. Seeing these cards representing the lion man, the god of law's eyes widened. Card transformation, the lion man is directly transformed into a card. Under normal circumstances, the entire orc tribe has the protection of God, and it is impossible for them to be turned into cards. But the scene in front of him directly tore apart the Dharma god's cognition. The god of law suddenly woke up and looked at Chen Hao. This is the divine power of the god of creation, which is enough to ignore the god of earth's protection of the orcs and directly turn the orcs into cards. There was a pile of cards in front of Chen Hao. Chen Hao glanced at it and his eyes fell on one of the cards. Lion King Lion Man. Name, Hess. Race, Lion Tribe. Gender, male. Position, Lion King of the Lion Tribe. Here it is. Chen Hao stretched out his hand and took down the card floating in front of him. He turned to look at Dharma God and handed the card in his hand to Dharma God. The god of law was stunned. He looked at Chen Hao blankly. This is. Chen Hao crossed his hands on his chest. Now that the Lion King has been resurrected by me, you can use it as your beast. I will give it to you. Its tameness is 100%. You can use it to unite the entire beast clan. When the Dharma god heard this, his old face was suddenly shocked. He looked at the card in his hand blankly, and then looked at Chen Hao. This. Chen Hao touched his chin and looked at the Dharma god. I think this can solve the problem of not being able to unite the orcs, right? The Dharma god nodded repeatedly. Of course, this is enough to solve the problem. When Chen Hao heard this, he smiled. That's good. Then the matter is settled. Does the old gentleman plan to follow me back to the god realm, or? The god of magic hurriedly said, no, I planned to come to the Beast clan a while ago. Since I got here with the help of Master Chuangshan's power, I just want to stay and finish the work. Hearing this, Chen Hao smiled and nodded slightly. Thank you for your hard work. With that said, Chen Hao withdrew his gaze, and his figure disappeared in front of the god of law. The god of law looked at the place where Chen Hao disappeared, and then looked at the Lion King card in his hand. He looked around again. Chen Hao only turned some of the lions into cards, and most of the lions were still in a state of wreckage. The Dharma god can see the blood and wreckage. For ordinary people, death means the end, but for the Creator, the death and survival of a life can be easily changed. The Dharma god withdrew his gaze and looked at the Lion King card in his hand. Not only can life and death be changed, but even people can be transformed into cards and tamed into beast masters. He raised his head and looked at the outline of the god realm above him. Chuangshan, is this the power of Chuangshan? It's shocking every time I see it. Early the next morning. Silver Fox Tribe. A ray of sunlight fell into the house through the window of the thatched cottage. There was a person lying on the big bed in the room. It was Chiaoer. Chiaoer felt the light, her eyelashes moved, and she slowly opened her eyes. Her blue eyes were shining. Is this a dream? Dream. Suddenly, a voice came from the side. Chiaoer's eyes narrowed slightly. She turned her face and looked to her side, only to see Chen Hao sitting by the bed, looking at Chiaoer with a smile. Master Chiaoer's eyes lit up, and she quickly stood up, trying to get out of bed. Chen Hao raised his hand to signal Chiaoer not to get too excited. Chiaoer stopped moving. She sat on the bed, leaning against the headboard, looking at Chen Hao. Chen Hao smiled and said, "You haven't had a good rest for a long time. Just sit on the bed and talk to me." Chiaoer nodded slightly. Chen Hao smiled gently and said, "I heard you say just now that you were dreaming. What dream did you have?" Hearing this, Chiaoer explained, "When I woke up just now, my head was fuzzy. I thought what happened yesterday was just a dream. After seeing the master, I was sure that it was not a dream yesterday. The master is really back." Chiaoer smiled. "The master has been gone for a long time." "Well, more than a year." Chen Hao nodded slightly. Chiaoer had a relaxed smile on her face, and her eyes were much brighter than yesterday. "It's great to see the master." She was very happy, and the girl's face was full of joy. "It's a big change compared to yesterday." Chen Hao looked at Chiaoer's smile, and Chen Hao also smiled. He couldn't help but raise his big hand and touch her little head, just like stroking a kitten's head. Chiaoer felt Chen Hao's movements. She closed her eyes, felt the touch of her master, and there was a joyful smile on her face. The long silver fox tail swayed slightly. Chen Hao took his hand back, and he smiled. "Ask you something." Chiaoer raised her face and looked at Chen Hao, her eyes full of expectation. "Master asks." Chen Hao sat on the chair, smiling, and said in a soft voice, "Next, I can take you back to the God realm. Do you want to go back with me?" Chiaoer was startled, her eyes lit up, but she seemed to realize something. "But, Master, if Chiaoer leaves, what will happen to the Silver Fox clan? I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world." Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 327. "My tribe is too weak among the beast tribe," Chiaoer said softly. "Before my master gave me power, I also knew that our tribe was very weak and had been oppressed by other races. There were also many sisters who were killed by other races in exchange for protection. The tribesmen took it away. I felt that the sisters were very pitiful at the time, and I would feel sad. But when I had the power given to me by the master, that sadness became stronger and stronger. I can feel more and more the malice of other races towards our clan. Xiao's eyes were shining. Obviously they are all Beast clan, but those guys never regarded the Silver Fox clan as the same Beast clan. They just use the Silver Fox clan as a recreational tool. As long as the animal desires arise, they will go to the Silver Fox clan for entertainment. If they resist, they will lose their lives. Xiao lowered her head slightly. After saying this, she raised her face and looked at Chen Hao. If I return to the God realm with the master, the Silver Fox clan will definitely become what it was before. Master, I don't want the Silver Fox clan to be like that before. It's back to its original appearance. Hear this. Chen Hao understood. After Qiao possessed the ability of the Bronze Mantis and assumed the responsibility of protecting the Silver Fox clan, her vision was no longer that of the ordinary Silver Fox girl before. What she could see broadened. Chen Hao has long known about the current predicament of the Silver Fox clan. The orcs are too primitive. In this primitive place, power is everything. The Silver Fox clan is the last among these beast tribes, but the fox girl of the Silver Fox clan is still one of the most beautiful women in the beast tribe. Anyone can imagine what would happen to this kind of race in this primitive orc tribe. However, Qiao's strength was weak before, so she could only adapt to this kind of life, adapt and become numb in this kind of life. But after becoming stronger and broadening her horizons, she naturally woke up. Chen Hao looked at Qiao, smiled and said, "So, do you plan to stay in the clan?" Qiao was startled, then she raised her face and looked at Chen Hao. Qiao really wants to stay with the master and serve him, but, you can't let go of the Silver Fox clan, Chen Hao asked with a smile. Qiao nodded slightly. Chen Hao smiled. He never forgets his roots, he is such a kind little guy. Qiao's eyes glowed with doubt. Don't forget your roots. She probably didn't understand what Chen Hao meant. That is to say, I think you are very good, Chen Hao explained with a smile. Hearing Chen Hao's praise, Qiao's eyes lit up slightly, and a smile appeared on her face. Chen Hao smiled gently and said, "But, it is not that easy to protect the safety of the clan. Even if you are invincible, even if you are very powerful. If you can't find a good way to scare the enemy will be like ants continuously." Hearing this, Qiao smiled. I remember what my master told me yesterday. If someone from another tribe comes to bully my tribe next time, I will go to his tribe and talk to their chief. If we can't negotiate, I will kill. Haha, Chen Hao smiled. Okay, you can apply what you have learned. Seeing Chen Hao smiling, Qiao was also happy. Explore it carefully. Next time we meet, I hope you and the Silver Fox clan will get better and better, Chen Hao said with a gentle smile. Qiao nodded repeatedly. Chen Hao stood up, reached out and touched the little head of Qiao who was sitting on the bedside, then turned around and walked out of the door on his own. Qiao looked at Chen Hao's back. I saw Chen Hao coming to the door and opening it, and there was sunlight shining from outside. The sun fell into the somewhat dark room, making it brightly lit. Chen Hao, standing at the door, looked gleaming golden under the sunlight. Qiao's eyes were glowing, full of admiration. "Master, so handsome." Chen Hao's figure disappeared. Qiao quickly got out of bed, ran to the door barefoot, and looked around, but she didn't see Chen Hao. Qiao was confused at first, then she smiled. "Master, I will definitely protect the Silver Fox clan this time." That night, within the realm of gods, Chen Hao was lying on the bed, looking at the familiar ceiling above. Thinking about what happened today. In just 1 year, Qiao has changed so much. However, it's not bad, it's growth. This can be regarded as evolution from another angle, right? Thinking about it, Chen Hao slowly closed his eyes. At the same time, under the cover of night, a military camp stood in the open space, and the fire inside the military camp was bright. Several humans in armor were walking around outside the military camp holding torches. The Nanli Empire is really greedy. After destroying the Sea Kingdom, it plans to take action against the reclusive grey elves. The little skeleton stood in the forest, looking at the military camp in the distance, muttering. The sword demon said calmly, Nanlei Empire's war machine will not stop easily once it is started. It is easy for such a huge war machine to destroy the grey elves. In my opinion, King Nanlei is so beautiful. The elves are famous for their beauty, and that guy's purpose is to collect the beauties of the grey elves? Humph, the king of the Nanli Empire is really a pervert. Sitting on the shoulders of the tall sword demon was a little girl. After listening to the sword demon's words, the little girl puffed her cheeks and made a disdainful comment. Well. The skeleton man looked at the sword demon, are you really planning to help the grey elves? The sword demon narrowed his eyes, Master asked me to protect the weak. Now this situation is obviously that the Nanli Empire is bullying the weak. Help, I must help, the little girl hurriedly said, Uncle Sword Demon, I support you. The Nanli Empire is so hateful, I support you to beat them to a pulp. The little skeleton touched his head, since you have decided, then go ahead, it will only take a few seconds anyway. As he said, his hand was placed on the sword at his waist. Wait, the sword demon raised his hand. The little skeleton looked at the sword demon. The sword demon slightly turned sideways and looked at the grey elf forest behind him. I want to go to the grey elf tribe first to see if the grey elf tribe is worthy of my protection. It's up to you. The little skeleton left the hilt in his hand and looked at the human camp in front. Let you live a little longer. Don't do it. What a pity. The little girl puffed up her cheeks and said. The sword demon said lightly, the master asked me to protect the weak, but not all the weak are worthy of protection. As he said, the sword demon led the little skeleton in. The sword demon's pupils glowed red. I need to know whether the grey elves are qualified to be protected by me. The sword demon and the little skeleton took the little girl into the grey elves' forest. The three walked for a while. Someone is watching us, the little skeleton said. The sword demon hummed, it's the grey elves' warriors. We have entered the territory of the grey elves, why don't they come out directly? The little skeleton asked. The sword demon was silent for a while, and it slowly said, because I spread a little breath. Ah, the little skeleton stared, and it looked at the sword demon, do you want to crush them to death? The sword demon said lightly, it can't be crushed to death, it's just a little breath, this can avoid some trouble. At the same time, on a branch not far away, a grey elf stood on a branch. If Chen Hao was here, he could recognize his identity. This guy is Lei Ling, the captain of the grey elves patrol team. At this moment, Lei Ling's face was pale, and his forehead was full of cold sweat. He stared at the sword demon and the little skeleton in the distance, and swallowed his saliva subconsciously. This aura, fortunately, I am a great elf, and the dark magic in my body can resist its aura. If someone else with less strength got closer, they would probably be crushed to death. What kind of monsters are these two? I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 328. Were these two monsters sent by humans? Lei Ling's face was grim. If they were sent by humans, the grey elves would be completely finished. The grey elves can't be their opponents, what should I do? Lei Ling clenched his fists and frowned. As the captain of the grey elves patrol, he had the obligation to expel any enemy that threatened the grey elves from the grey elves forest. However, after feeling the breath of the two monsters in front of him, he had no urge to take action. Because he could almost smell the smell of death, as long as he got close, he would definitely die. These two guys are simply abyss monsters that crawled out of the abyss of death, it's unbelievable, Lei Ling muttered to himself. Suddenly, a figure jumped over from a branch not far away. Captain. Lei Ling looked at the man and frowned. Have you told the tribe leader? The grey elf warrior nodded. Yes, the tribe leader said that she is coming. Lei Ling frowned. The tribe leader comes, even if the tribe leader comes, he can't be their opponent. If they are enemies sent by humans, we can't have a chance of winning. Lei Ling gritted his teeth. Let the tribe abandon the grey elf forest and run away. Can they escape? The grey elf warrior suddenly said. Lei Ling frowned and said nothing. He couldn't be sure whether he could escape. It seems that your breath scared them, and they have no intention of coming here at all, the little skeleton said. The sword demon said lightly, this is my purpose. I don't plan to talk to the grey elves and these minions. They can't represent the entire grey elf tribe. What I want to see is the tribe leader of the grey elves. What do you want to know? The little skeleton's empty black pupils glowed with a hint of red. The sword demon said slowly, I want to know what kind of person the chieftain of the grey elves is. If the chieftain is a bad person, there is no need to save him. Uncle Sword Demon. Suddenly, the little girl on the sword demon's shoulder cried out. The sword demon was startled, and he turned his head to look at the little girl. The little girl was looking in one direction. She turned back to look at the sword demon and said, Uncle Sword Demon, there seems to be something over there. As she said that, she pointed forward. The sword demon and the little skeleton looked in the direction the little girl pointed. Through the gaps in the trees, they could vaguely see something standing over there. It seems to be a statue. The little skeleton crossed his arms and could only vaguely see the statue through the dense trees, plus it was night and the distance was a bit far. That place is not in the direction of the Grey Elves tribe. The sword demon retracted his sight. Let's go. Uncle Sword Demon, I want to go and see, the little girl hurriedly said. I want to see the statue. The sword demon frowned. I want to see it too, the little skeleton said suddenly. The sword demon was startled, and it looked at the little skeleton. It's understandable that the little girl is curious and wants to see everything, but why does the little skeleton want to see it too? The little skeleton touched his bony chin and said, as far as I know, a race will carve a statue in the image of the main god they believe in, but I remember that the Grey Elves are a race abandoned by the forest goddess Hera, and they don't have their own gods. Without their own gods, how can they carve statues? I'm curious, what will be the template for the statues they carve at this point? The little skeleton looked at the sword demon. Look at their beliefs, maybe you can make some judgments. Hearing this, the sword demon was silent for a while. Uncle Sword Demon. The little girl stretched out her voice and shook the sword demon with her little hand like a spoiled child. The sword demon was a little helpless. Okay. Yeah, the little girl smiled as if she had won. The sword demon and the little skeleton walked towards the statue. When the sword demon and the little skeleton walked out of the forest and saw the statue in front of them, the red dots in the little skeleton's empty pupils trembled slightly. How is it possible? This is a vast open space in front of him. In the middle of the open space stands a statue that is 5 meters high. Under the moonlight, the little skeleton can see the appearance of the statue clearly. This is a human-shaped statue, and the appearance of the statue is exactly the appearance of Chen Hao. The red dots of the little skeleton trembled. Damn it, suddenly, a voice sounded. Then, one figure after another fell in front of the little skeleton and the sword demon. There were 3 Grey Elves in total. The leader was the Grey Elf captain Lei Ling. Lei Ling drew the sword at his waist, looked at the sword demon and the little skeleton with a pale face, and protected the statue behind him. Lei Ling gritted his teeth, with veins protruding on his forehead. He stared at the sword demon and the little skeleton and said viciously, as long as I am here, don't think about destroying the statue of my god. The sword demon and the little skeleton looked at each other. The little skeleton looked at Lei Ling, and the red light in his pupils was particularly bright. He said, "Is this statue the god believed in by the Grey Elves?" Lei Ling frowned, "Nonsense. Didn't you come here to destroy the statue? I don't care whether you are sent by the demon god or the elf god. You all listen to me. The Grey Elves believe in him. He is the god of our tribe, Lord Chen Hao." Lei Ling's eyes were firm. The little skeleton's heart was shocked, and it looked at the sword demon. The sword demon looked at Lei Ling. "You know you are not our opponent, but in order to protect your faith, you don't even want your own life." Lei Ling frowned. Before Lei Ling could speak, a voice rang out. "For the Grey Elves, faith is far more important than life." Hearing this voice, Lei Ling looked over. "I saw a holy light on the side, and a beautiful grey elf woman flapped her wings behind her, surrounded by a holy halo. She was like the moon in the sky, holy and flawless. She flapped her wings and slowly landed in front of Lei Ling. She opened her beautiful eyes and looked at the sword demon and the little skeleton in front of her. Chief Lei Ling said. The two grey elf warriors behind Lei Ling also spoke. "Chief." The beautiful woman glanced at the three subordinates behind her, nodded slightly, retracted her gaze, and looked at the little skeleton. "The Grey Elves are a race abandoned by the gods. It was the Lord God who gave our tribe the protection of the gods again, so the Lord God is the faith of our tribe. Faith is stronger than our lives. Faith has been established, so it will not be easily destroyed." The beautiful woman paused and said, "My name is Louise, and I am the chief of the Grey Elves." She looked at the sword demon and the little skeleton. "You two, what are you doing in the Grey Elves?" The sword demon glanced at Louise, raised his face, and looked at the statue in front of him. The little skeleton's eyes fell on the statue of Chen Hao, under the gaze of Louise and others. The little skeleton raised his hand, put it in front of his chest, and then knelt on one knee in front of the statue of Chen Hao. Seeing this, Louise was stunned at first, and she looked at Lei Ling and others beside her. Several people were puzzled. Louise said, "Make way." She and Lei Ling and the others turned slightly to make way. The sword demon took the little girl off his shoulders, and the little girl looked at him with puzzled eyes. The sword demon also knelt on one knee in front of Chen Hao's statue, like the little skeleton, put his hand on his chest, and slowly lowered his head. The little skeleton greets the master. The sword demon greets the master. The two closed their eyes, bowed their heads slightly, and said this in the most sincere voice. The little girl saw the little skeleton and the sword demon like this, and she, who was small, also knelt on one knee like the little skeleton and the sword demon. The baby greets the master. Looking at this scene, Louise's eyes trembled slightly, her mouth opened slightly, and she was a little unbelievable. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 329. Who are you? Louise's eyes were full of confusion. She didn't know why the two monster-like beings in front of her were kneeling down to worship their gods. The sword demon slowly stood up and looked at Louise. The statue you erected is my master. Louise's eyes lit up slightly, and she smiled. So, it's a misunderstanding. Are the three of you sent by the Lord God to save us? No, the sword demon said lightly. The master asked us to experience this world, and we just passed by you. Before seeing this statue, we didn't know that you would regard my master as your faith. Hearing this, Louise was slightly startled, as if she realized something. Suddenly, Louise knelt on one knee in front of the sword demon, with her hand on her chest. Lei Ling and others behind Louise saw their patriarch's posture, and they hurriedly knelt on one knee. Seeing the four people who suddenly knelt in front of them, the sword demon and the little skeleton looked at each other. The sword demon looked at Louise. Louise put her hands on her chest, lowered her head slightly, and said, "Lord God is the Lord of the Lord gods. You too call the Lord God the Master, which means that you too are the Lord gods. Now the grey elves are about to suffer a disaster. If there is no help from others, the grey elves will be exterminated by humans. Louise, the believer, dares to ask the two Lord gods to protect the safety of my grey elves." Hearing this, the sword demon said lightly, "You regard my lord as your faith. Just for this reason, I will not stand idly by." After speaking, the sword demon turned around. Under the gaze of Louise and others, the sword demon walked out of the forest. Looking at the back of the sword demon, Louise's eyes were full of doubts. "He is going to go to the human camp to find trouble with humans," the little skeleton suddenly explained. Louise was startled, and she looked at the little skeleton. The little skeleton said calmly, "Within half an hour, the war between the Nanli Empire and you can come to an end." "How is this possible?" Lei Ling couldn't help but say. "That's the main force of the Nanli Empire, with more than 300,000 people. Half an hour, how can it be done?" The little skeleton crossed his arms. "You will know when the time comes. Uncle Skeleton." Suddenly a voice sounded next to him. The little skeleton was startled. He turned his head and saw that the little girl was rubbing her eyes with her little hands, showing a tired look. The little girl raised her tired little face and looked at the little skeleton. "Uncle Skeleton, the baby is sleeping." When the little skeleton heard it, he squatted down and picked up the little girl. The little girl nestled in the little skeleton's arms, curled up her little body, and closed her eyes. Louise looked at it and smiled and said, "Lord God, please invite me to my tribe. My tribe has a residence where she can rest." The little skeleton hummed, "That's the best." That night, the sword demon held a red broadsword in his hand, staring at the human camp in front of him, and he stepped into the camp. And then there were all kinds of screams and shouts. "Help! There are intruders! What is this? Ah! No! Oh my God, what kind of monster is this?" The entire Nanli Empire's camp was filled with death and chaos. This was a massacre, a one-sided massacre. In the early morning of the next day, a member of the Grey Elf Patrol team stood on a large branch at the edge of the Grey Elf Forest, looking at the Nanli Empire's camp in front of him. The scene he saw made his face turn pale. How could this be possible? The Nanli Empire's camp was now in ruins, with piles of broken limbs and debris lying on the ground, and blood dyed the earth red. Overnight, the Nanli Empire's camp, which was astonishing in momentum, became a ruin, and only the corpses of more than 300,000 people were left. The wind blew across the battlefield, and the air was filled with a strong and somewhat pungent smell of blood. Louise, the leader of the Grey Elves, stood on the battlefield. She looked at the broken limbs and the corpses around her. Her eyes trembled slightly. 300,000 people died overnight. The power of the Lord God really destroyed the world. Fortunately, I didn't have the impulse to fight with them last night. Lei Ling was also in shock. His face was a little pale, and he was a little relieved at this moment. Although the sword demon killed the enemy, the Grey Elves were saved by the sword demon. But looking at the tragic situation on the battlefield, all the Grey Elves warriors couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. 300,000 lives, all gone overnight. How bloody and terrifying it is. This is the power of the Lord God, a terrifying power that makes people cold all over. Louise looked at the battlefield that had turned into a purgatory on earth, and she murmured, "This is the power of the followers of the Lord of God that we believe in." The Lord of God let them out to train. They came to the Grey Elves when the Grey Elves were in crisis, saved the Grey Elves, and helped the Grey Elves escape this crisis. I think, perhaps this is the Lord of God's blessing in the dark. Louise, Lord of God, once again protected us in the moment of crisis for the Grey Elves. As she said this, Louise put her hands together, clasped her fingers together, closed her eyes, and silently said in her heart, "Thank you, Lord of God." Seeing this, the other Grey Elves warriors also closed their eyes and prayed. At the same time, in the Warcraft forest, Chen Hao stood on the grass full of dead leaves. He turned his body and looked at the trees around him. He could feel the touch of the dead leaves breaking under his feet. He could hear the wind blowing through the woods, and the leaves rubbing against each other in the strong wind, making a rustling sound. At the same time, Chen Hao could smell the smell of rotten wood and the mixture of grass and soil. Chen Hao smiled. It's a nostalgic place. The place where Chen Hao is now is the place where Chen Hao first arrived in this world. Last year, the big wolf said that he would take his wife to live the kind of life he wanted. Xiadi said that the big wolf is now in this monster forest. I haven't seen the big wolf for a long time. Chen Hao wants to see what this silly wolf is doing now. Chen Hao thought that before going to visit the big wolf, since he came to this monster forest, he could recall the past. Chen Hao walked towards the big wolf's residence along the place where he was just born. As he walked, he looked around. There should be many monsters in the Warcraft forest. But after walking all the way, Chen Hao found that there was no monster. The monsters have their own territories, and some weak monsters will not approach the territories of powerful monsters. If I am not mistaken, those monsters should know that the big wolf lives nearby, so there are no other monsters. Suddenly, Chen Hao's footsteps paused slightly. Chen Hao saw a tombstone, which was standing in the Warcraft forest. How could a tombstone suddenly appear in the Warcraft forest? And, I remember that this is where I lived in the Warcraft forest before. Chen Hao was puzzled. He walked over and looked at the text on the tombstone. The text read, "The tomb of my late mother, the Wind Wolf King." Chen Hao's heart was shocked. His mind rang with the past. When the body of the Wind Wolf King, the mother of the Big Wolf, died, was taken away by the Wind Wolf King magic crystal, and its body was buried here by the Big Bear using earth magic. This is... Chen Hao thought of the Big Wolf in his mind. In an instant, Chen Hao understood. So the Big Wolf already knew all this? Master, suddenly, a voice came from behind Chen Hao. I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 330. Chen Hao turned around and looked behind him. I saw a giant wolf about 2 meters high at the shoulders, with white hair and golden light standing there. It stared at Chen Hao with its golden eyes. After seeing Chen Hao's appearance clearly, the tail behind it waggled. Master. It was the voice of the big wolf. Chen Hao smiled. Big wolf, long time no see. The big wolf's eyes were shining with joy. Is the master here? Suddenly, a voice came from the side, a female voice. Chen Hao and De Lang looked together and saw behind De Lang, a wind wolf about the same height as De Lang walking towards the side. It saw Chen Hao, and there was a glint in its eyes. Master, it greeted Chen Hao aloud. This little wind wolf is much larger than the one we saw last year, and it can speak human language. In other words, it has passed the Beast King stage. In just one day, it was impossible for it to reach the Beast King stage, and Chen Hao did not deliberately cultivate it. In other words, it was the big wolf who used his own divine power to raise the level of the little wind wolf. Chen Hao remembered that Xiao Fenglang also named himself Carol. When Carol saw Chen Hao, there was joy in her eyes. Chen Hao smiled and was about to say something. Suddenly, Chen Hao noticed 2 little guys following Carol. Seeing the 2 little guys, Chen Hao's eyes lit up slightly. Little wolf cub. Next to Carol were 2 small wind wolves that were only the size of a basketball. The 2 little wind wolves shook their tails and ran toward Chen Hao on their short legs. Ouch! One of the little wind wolves barked twice at Chen Hao, its wolf tail wagging like an electric fan. After calling, it came close to Chen Hao and rubbed its little head against Chen Hao's pants. The other one also imitated the one next to it, rubbing its body and head against Chen Hao in a coquettish manner. Chen Hao was startled for a moment, then he smiled and slowly sat down. When he sat down, the black mist behind him condensed into a chair. Chen Hao sat on the chair and picked up one of the little wind wolves. When he was picked up, little Feng Lang stared straight at Chen Hao with his big eyes, and his tail swayed behind him. Chen Hao smiled. He put little Feng Lang in his arms and stroked little Feng Lang's little head. Little Feng Lang happily pressed his little head against Chen Hao's palm, with a face full of enjoyment. Although this little guy has not been tamed by books, it seems to have regarded itself as its master. Is it because it is the child of Big Wolf and Carol, so it has been loyal to itself since birth? Chen Hao looked at Big Wolf, who had joy on his face. Chen Hao said with a smile, looking at this kid, it reminds me of your childhood. You were just like him when you were a kid, you loved to act coquettishly. The big wolf looked a little more embarrassed, and he said cautiously, Master, in front of the children, I just want to act serious. Chen Hao smiled, yes, you have grown up too. Chen Hao placed the little Feng Lang cub in his arms on the ground. The two little wind wolf cubs stared at Chen Hao with big eyes. The wolf tails behind them were wagging, as if they were waiting for Chen Hao's next instruction. Chen Hao stretched out his hand, touched the little head of the little Feng Lang cub, and said with a smile, Go find your mother, I want to talk to your father. Ouch! The little Feng Lang cubs looked at Chen Hao with confusion in their eyes. They obviously didn't understand Chen Hao's words. After all, I'm still young, so it's normal. Come here, little guys, Carol said. As soon as they heard Carol's voice, the wolf ears of the two little wind wolf pups stood up. They looked at Carol together. Carol said, Come here. They quickly got up and ran towards Carol. Chen Hao looked at Carol and said with a smile, Carol, please take the child and leave first. I want to talk to Big Wolf alone. Hearing this, Carol nodded slightly, then looked at the big wolf. The big wolf said with a smile, Take the child home first. I haven't seen the master for a long time. Okay, Carol smiled. Carol left with the two little wind wolf cubs. The two little wind wolf cubs followed Carol away and looked back at Chen Hao. He seemed reluctant to leave. Chen Hao smiled, raised his hand and waved to them. Watching the three wolves leave, Chen Hao's eyes fell on De Lang, and he smiled and said, I saw the tombstone you erected for your mother. Hearing this, De Lang was slightly startled, and then looked at Chen Hao with his golden eyes. Chen Hao said with a gentle smile, How much do you know about your mother? Hearing this, De Lang lowered his head apologetically. De Lang didn't intend to hide this matter. He just felt that it was De Lang's private matter. If I told the master, I was worried that it would cause trouble to the master, so I didn't tell the master. I know everything about my mother. Big Wolf looked at the tombstone not far away. I also know that the Wind Wolf King magic crystal that the master ate before was my mother's magic crystal. Chen Hao's smile froze, and he looked at Big Wolf strangely. Who told you these? Big Wolf said, Uncle Big Bear told me at first. Big Bear? Chen Hao was startled. Yes, no one else knows about Big Wolf and his mother except Big Bear and me. He didn't say it, but the Big Wolf could know it, so it must have been the Big Bear who said it. But, why? No matter how Chen Hao thought about it, he didn't understand why Big Bear would mention this to Big Wolf. You know, Big Bear killed Big Wolf's mother. Do you know how your mother died? Chen Hao asked tentatively. Big Wolf nodded slightly. About the death of my mother, Uncle Big Bear told me at first. Later, after I became a god, I suddenly had memories of my mother in my mind. My mother was a magic beast that had just been promoted to the King of Wind Wolf. After giving birth to us, she took care of the three of us brothers for a while without eating or drinking. Later, because of hunger, she had to find food in Uncle Big Bear's territory, and was regarded as a provocation by Uncle Big Bear. Through my mother's memory, I can feel the uneasiness of my mother before she died. She was afraid that after her death, the three of us brothers would starve to death without food, so she dragged her dying body back to the den, just to feed the three of us brothers milk for the last time. She was worried about the three of us brothers before she died. Big Wolf's eyes were filled with tears. Chen Hao saw this. Big Wolf, after becoming a god, has the memory of its mother. Is it because it ate its mother's magic crystal before, so it has this memory? No wonder Big Wolf's temperament changed after becoming a god. So that's it? Then, do you want revenge? Chen Hao asked subconsciously. Big Wolf shook his head. I have been with my master for so long, I know that the battle between monsters is life and death. It is normal for Uncle Bear, the Beast King, to make that choice in that situation. That battle was a fight for life and death. And, I know that Uncle Bear feels guilty. When the three of us were young, Uncle Bear took us out hunting. When we were in danger, he often used his body as a shield to help us resist attacks. Even if he got hurt after returning home, he didn't say a word. Uncle Bear takes good care of us. But I still hate Uncle Bear, but I can't do anything to Uncle Bear. As he said that, Big Wolf lowered his head even more.